Once upon a time, Americans built the greatest public works project in history, the Interstate Highway System. Over 46,000 miles of roadway that connect us and bring us the things we depend on every day. Those roads absolutely changed our lives, and we're absolutely wearing them out.
There are so many more people using this system than there were 50 years ago. It's unbelievable.
The infrastructure has a lifespan. My career has spanned longer than the lifespan of many of those roads.
There's a lot of bad roads just about everywhere in any state.
There's been a few places where I just said, oh, I don't want to ever go over that bridge again.
So we've got safety issues we need to be concerned about. And we've got crashes that are occurring.
Before the end of today, 10 people will die in a truck crash.
Where's the outcry?
When you look historically, the better the roads have gotten, the fewer people die in crashes.
The problem is we're not building highways.
We're now investing a smaller percentage of our gross domestic product in transportation infrastructure than many third world countries.
I think that most people do not sort of realize that every tangible object, every piece of food they consume was most likely in a truck before it got to them.
It's hard to imagine what kind of economy we would have in the United States without the interstate highway system.
One component of the network shuts down and it impacts the rest of the network. It's that fragile. I mean, we're on that close of a sliver of the transportation system working as people want it to work.
We are on a path where there will be a day when we need to move commodity, food, medical supplies, things to keep us alive and healthy and safe. We will not be able to move our commodities.
I don't know when the wheel stops turning, but it will stop turning. It has to. I was an only child and spent a lot of time with my two grandfathers and my dad. And they were all truckers. Our family, we have a very wonderful life, and it's been because of our involvement in trucking.
My grandfather hauled a lot of steel. He worked very hard, and my dad started Maverick. My sister and I are involved in the business, and she started a few years before me because she's a few years older than I am.
When I had the epiphany that I really did want to be involved in the family business and everything, it was just kind of a natural fit.
In my professional career, not only just owning the trucking company that I own, I've gotten really involved in a lot of the regulations and the legislation associated with the industry. I've been chairman of the American Transportation Research Institute, CEO of Maverick USA, chairman of the American Trucking Associations. I was on the Transportation Research Board of the National Academies of Science. As a safety leader, I'm here today to express ATA's concern about the changes to the hours of service rules and describe how these rules will impact my company, safety, and the economy. I've tried to understand what the facts were and then tried to shape whatever type of change that might need to occur. I do support carbon taxes, a fuel tax system, as long as that money is specifically used on infrastructure investments. What I'm worried about is, have I done all that I can do as an individual who owns a business, as an individual who's responsible for the lives of a couple thousand people, and then all their dependents. And I think it takes someone saying, we're going to have to fix some things that are inherently wrong, or we're really not going to like the outcome.
Our economy is a heart. Our roadways are the veins. And our drivers and railways and other parts of our supply chain are the blood. All our arteries are filled with cholesterol.
42% of the major roadways in metropolitan areas in this country are congested every day. If you were a human being with that kind of a circulatory issue, would you get on it quickly? Perhaps you would.
Well, the U.S. is choking on its traffic congestion problem. Cities of all sizes are unable to update their infrastructure to keep up with demand.
Our drivers can't get through our cities effectively. They sit in traffic, burning fuel, which hurts our environment, and wasting our money.
This generation hasn't done a damn thing, and me being a part of that, to do something about this.
We've depended upon user fees for funding our infrastructure predominantly since Dwight David Eisenhower.
Ah, quick name check. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces during World War II, President of the United States from 1953 to 61. You might have seen his name on interstate signs across the country, not because he invented the interstate system. That was the work of a civil engineer, public roads commissioner, and total road nerd, Thomas Harris McDonald. And it was Secretary of the Treasury, George Humphrey, who came up with the idea of a highway trust fund, structured like Social Security, so the user fees our grandparents paid into it could only be used to build highways. It also meant the system could be built without the country going into debt. Still, it took a 5-star general to push Congress to take action. Where's that guy when we need him now?
The last significant surface transportation bill we did, 2006, was a very fair bipartisan approach to the issues. After 2010, it all changed. A group of Luddites came in, and they don't believe that the federal government has a duty or the right or obligation to invest in the national transportation system.
I believe there are a number of members of Congress who are terrified of what might happen to them, the political consequences of having their name, or heaven forbid, a vote linked to raising taxes on someone.
The Highway Trust Fund is almost insolvent. Is this the right time to consider increasing the gas tax?
I've never voted to raise the gas tax.
We're stuck.
We cannot compete in this global marketplace that we compete in when we're operating on 50, 60, 70-year-old outdated infrastructure.
Passenger car drivers don't like to have to dodge potholes either, and they don't want the bridge connecting them to their office to be out of commission. So infrastructure isn't just a trucking issue, it's an everybody issue.
There are literally times where I have difficulty hanging on to the steering wheel of this truck because I've hit a pothole.
The bridges are old and just falling apart. Sometimes it's kind of hard just to be able to get from point A to point B.
Bridges are critical links. If you don't have them, people are being cut off, local economies are being disrupted.
If people would actually stop and get out and look at the bridge that they were getting ready to cross, they'd never go across it now.
According to the government, there's 70,000 bridges that have been deemed structurally deficient.
Yep.
What does that mean?
It means that they're bridges that need to be really either replaced or repaired in a very dramatic way.
They're dangerous.
I don't want to say they're unsafe, but they're dangerous.
In metropolitan areas, there's a greater percentage of structurally deficient bridges, bridges that need to be inspected more closely, bridges that have obvious signs of wear and tear and age on them. 200 million times a day, motorists in the United States are driving over structurally deficient bridges in urban areas.
Breaking news this morning, a bridge collapse in Washington state sending cars and people plunging into the frigid Skagit River 40 feet below.
This morning, we're also learning that the design of the bridge is apparently outdated. That bridge serving as the main route between Seattle and Canada, and it's now completely cut off access. And according to federal records, its sufficiency rating is well below the statewide average rating.
30 by 50 foot section of California's Interstate 10 freeway collapsed Sunday, sending this truck over the edge of the roadway. People driving this major artery between Los Angeles and Phoenix saw hours-long backups in both directions.
There are more than 4,000 bridges in metropolitan Pittsburgh, and 20% of them are structurally deficient.
See that structure underneath it? They actually built that to catch any of the falling concrete so it wouldn't hit traffic underneath it. That's amazing.
There's been a few places where I just said, oh, I don't want to ever go over that bridge again. But you get on this bridge and you're just thinking, okay, what about all these people on this bridge with me? You know, and then you're not the only truck on that bridge, so you're thinking, well, that's a lot of weight adding up on this bridge, and it's sitting here shaking.
Obviously, this is a catastrophe of historic proportions for Minnesota.
There were troubling safety questions about this bridge years before the collapse.
Annual inspections had noted assorted cracks, corrosion, and fatigue.
So why was the state of Minnesota all the way up to the governor's office telling us this bridge was safe?
It troubles me that the federal government does not see this issue the same as they see a crack in an engine on an airplane.
61 kids and staff members from White House Community Center were coming back from a field trip when their world turned upside down.
There was cracks and stuff on the bridge. There was broken concrete. Everybody was screaming and everybody was scared.
We have got to find ways of reinvesting in all of those basic necessities. And unfortunately, there will be more people die than need to die before we actually do something about it.
This is one thing I enjoy every day is coming out here and just getting out and seeing the scenery.
When I came down 101, I just absolutely enjoyed that drive.
After I'm home 2 or 3 days, I miss being on the road. I miss driving, you know, seeing the world. I get to see a lot, do a lot.
There we go. Trucking has been very, very good to me. I only have a high school education. So trucking has given me a bigger life.
I started driving truck around 1990, 1991 in a local job in the city of Olympia. And then that just led me one step into the next, and eventually in a few years I bought my own truck. The rest, I guess, is history. I've been driving truck now for about 24 years, and I have something around 2.5 million miles in. In 2010, I was awarded the Goodyear Highway Hero of the Year award. That's the largest honor that I've ever gotten. Having that acknowledgement is something that I cherish for my family. When I was a child growing up, truck drivers were the heroes of the highway. You know, you'd go by and you'd do the arm pump motion and get them to blow the horn for you.
They were the knights of the road.
Truckers and truckers communicating with each other on CBs were sort of the new cowboys.
When you're broke down on the side of the road, if you could have one of these guys stop and help you, that's the way it's supposed to work.
And so there was this slew of trucker movies. Convoy is certainly the best example. It's one guy behind the wheel of this powerful and important machine. Obviously, America runs on trucking and runs on transportation. And I think these films romanticize that to a degree.
But basically, to the general public, we are invisible unless something goes wrong.
Everything that we use comes to us most likely from a truck. So the general public just expects it to happen.
Certainly when I was a kid, we didn't have fresh produce in the wintertime. We didn't have it unless it was in season or close to season. Now you can have fresh produce, you can have anything all year round that comes by truck, and that's the only way it can come. There aren't many stores around that have railroad tracks at the back, or for that matter, places where boats can dock. Trucks deliver, they deliver for America.
The typical consumer is frustrated when they see a truck in front of them. I can't see around it. It's moving too slow. It's in my way. Instead of, I'm always like, did the shoes I ordered from Zappos, are they on that truck?
We need to do a better job talking to Americans about how their decisions impact transportation systems, particularly as we've moved to a world of Amazon Prime and deliveries as opposed to making our own personal trips. We don't think about the truck traffic that causes.
The last mile is the hardest mile. Everything has to move that last mile to get to the shopping center, to all the stores, so it's accessible to the public. Those centers are focused around car traffic. They're not designed to have a 70-foot tractor-trailer rig coming in and out of there. How can the economy grow if you can't get the product down the road?
This morning, a federal transportation bill is heading to President Obama for his signature after a rare bipartisan move by Congress. It's a huge bill, handing out $305 billion.
Over the last 5 years, there were nothing but short-term bills from Congress. It was tough to plan for transportation infrastructure improvements.
Projects take years to get going, to get approval, designed, and built. So 5 years is a pretty good length of time.
Great. New bill gets passed, billions of dollars allocated. That fixes it, right? Only temporarily. Here's what you need to know. The Highway Trust Fund is the money source for all our highway projects. That money comes from user fees, fuel taxes, taxes on tires, large truck and trailer sales, and heavy-use vehicle fees. But Congress hasn't adjusted those user fees since 1993. Come on now. Let's say you started your career in 1993. You know, when Richard Gere and Cindy Crawford were People Magazine's sexiest couple alive and you loved your shiny new Ford Cobra. Since then, you've taken on more and more and are working way beyond the original job description. If you hadn't gotten a raise by now, you'd demand changes or start looking for other opportunities, wouldn't you? Congress doesn't see it that way. For over 20 years, they've squabbled over whether to raise the fuel tax or switch to a fee for every mile we drive, or a tax on crude oil or tolls or congestion fees or anything that could catch up to the real cost of living today. Because the fund simply doesn't have enough money to repair, maintain, and upgrade our antiquated and overwhelmed highways, we're billions of dollars behind. How can we hope to build a road for the next generation?
One of the problems with the legislation is that there's not a sustainable long-term funding mechanism. There are a lot of kind of one-time revenue options that have been cobbled together.
One, it sells oil from America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
that sale won't happen until 2023, but this law spends the money now. Another issue, it takes $53 billion from the Federal Reserve's surplus accounts.
Congress has set itself up for having to re-engage this issue in 5 years.
The United States cannot be the Achilles heel of global trade flows. It can't be, and it shouldn't be.
We know the fuel tax works. It's easy to administer, Americans are familiar with it, and with some modifications to account for the emerging class of non-fuel vehicles, it would continue to be viable for years. Yet Congress has been operating under the assumption that pennies might fall from heaven.
Instead of financing this in an honest, straightforward way, we're relying on budget gimmicks, one-time funding mechanisms, short-term measures that really are going to make the problem more difficult in the longer term instead of fixing it.
Our roads are not Democrat or Republican. They're American. And the problem that we have with our infrastructure is an American problem.
Americans, we want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want the roads, but we don't want to pay for them.
We're taxed enough and finally got lower gas prices to where we can be comfortable driving our car again, so I'm fine with it like it is.
I think they should leave it alone just like it is.
As long as we're trying to push an ever-growing number of drivers onto a not expanding network of poorly maintained roads and bridges, we're going to continue to see very negative safety issues in this country.
It is not just an economic issue, it's a jobs issue, it's a safety issue, it's a quality of life issue.
What happened to my son is he was trying to get back to college his senior year, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And he almost made it. Just a few miles from school, a tractor-trailer truck was behind him, speeding 8 miles over the posted speed limit on the busiest traffic day of the year, which I'm sure the driver knew, using cruise control. He didn't touch the brakes until he was within 100 feet of my son's car. He slammed into him and killed Cullum. And that day has split our lives in half. Before December 1st, 2002, and after that. We all share the same space at high speeds in close proximity with behemoths that dwarf our cars every day. And the thousands of deaths and tens of thousands of injuries that are caused by those conditions.
That's what that kind of crash looks like. It leaves people dead, it leaves people, seriously injured, and this is what we're all fighting for.
Everybody's obligation to share the road with other people. Truck drivers, car drivers, kids, motorcycles.
The top-notch driver shows self-control, foresight, and good sportsmanship even when caught in a frustrating traffic jam. He resists the temptation to use his horn uselessly. He does not try to force his way into a seemingly faster lane, but waits until the traffic jam is alleviated.
He waits until the traffic jam is alleviated. He's gonna be sitting there a long time. You're probably wondering what this has to do with bad roads. Well, bad roads aren't just full of potholes and cracks. They're very, very crowded. The highway system designed 60 years ago was never meant to handle the number of vehicles it does today. Think about it as if the highways are your favorite pair of jeans. Old, a bit worn, but you can't bear to part with them. Our real problem is we've gained weight. We can just barely squeeze into our jeans. The jeans we wear so often, we can't imagine living without them. Our options are simple. Let out a few seams whenever we can, maybe reinforce them in a few key places, but we're also gonna have to lose a little weight and reduce the stress we're putting on them. Maybe try walking or biking a little more. Because if you think the roads are crowded now with our population at a mere 319 million, wait 35 years when we hit 400 million. Okay, So as we were saying,
when I was growing up, driver's ed was a requirement.
The basic speed rule is that you must always drive at a reasonable and safe speed.
Now it's not a requirement in many jurisdictions anymore, so people aren't getting the instruction they need to properly operate a vehicle or to operate around other vehicles that are on the highways.
There are about 1,000 heavy commercial truck crashes every single day in the United States. Every day.
Oh my gosh, look out! Oh!
We operate within 3 feet of the American citizens at all times. There's a lot of stress associated with that. There's a lot of consequences to our being good at what we do.
You've got to constantly be looking in your mirrors and knowing where the vehicles are, what color, what it is. That way, if it doesn't go past you and you haven't seen it, that there's a good chance it's in your blind spot. People don't understand that when you're in certain spots along a truck that we can't see you.
I just see so many wrecks and crashes and cars burning up and people hurt, and you know, it's disgusting. It's sad.
What surprises me is how people take chances in front of the big trucks when we're driving. Not even a half a car length, they'll shoot over in front of you. So I just learned to back off of them and drive slow and let all of them get in front of me and drive as fast as they want to, as long as they don't get in front of this truck.
If we're going to safely get from point A to point B, we're going to have to be well rested. We're going to have to be drug and alcohol free.
I know that trucking companies are required to do urine tests to find out whether their drivers are using illicit drugs. Those are Schedule I drugs.
We also voluntarily do all the hair follicle testing as well. We caught 33 people last year that had passed urine test that failed the hair follicle test. These are people that don't work for me
anymore.
But these people are working for someone else because there wasn't a repository for that information. I couldn't legally even tell other employers of this situation.
Schedule II drugs, I don't believe are tested for.
We really can do better than this.
I was in between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I was home for the summer, and Mom and Dad had just left to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for vacation. I decided to use my dad's truck because it was new and it was full of fuel. I came up over a hill and there was a dump truck that had come to a T intersection. He should have stopped, but he kept going. There was nothing I could do, so I hit the back end of his dump truck. So the impact was concentrated on my side. The wheel was shoved up through the floorboard.
The doctor said that if the vehicle that she was in did not have airbags, she may not have made it.
If I would have been in a car, I would have been decapitated.
The driver that did that to her was in a dump truck, and he left the scene. What's wrong with the person that does that? And I worked really hard to make sure that that individual didn't drive a truck for anybody else. Not that I'm vindictive, but he almost killed my baby girl.
That was really a defining moment for our family, our business. We haven't always trucked the way that we do now.
We decided that we were going to be compliant with the hours of service rules.
Life's too short, you know, we need to get it together and do it the right way.
I just got married on August 2nd. She tells me all the time, hurry up and get home. But she knew I was a truck driver, and she knew what she was getting into. You know, and I get to go home for 34 hours. That's not even 2 days, and I'm back out on the road again, so I don't get to spend very much time with her at all unless I take it off. I chose this kind of job because of the pay, the benefits, the medical and dental and everything that I get is great. But not being with your family and seeing your new wife and not even being able to do a honeymoon yet because you got your job to do makes it kind of rough.
My father and grandfather were truckers, and I can tell you today's industry is not my grandfather and father's industry. The growth in population in this country and the need for the movement of goods and services is literally going to overwhelm the infrastructure as we know it today.
This kind of have it here and now attitude that we expect is really impacting on the entire transportation system and its ability to meet the demands, not just with the freight sector, but with the general public.
Whatever you're ordering, goods movement doesn't happen in a vacuum, and goods movement doesn't happen only in your local community. People need to understand the fact that they're ordering things over the internet or doing business with communities and companies around the country, and those products have to get to the final destination and to the consumer.
40% of the container freight that comes into the United States comes into California ports. And we're connected to the rest of the country with essentially 3 interstates, Interstate 10, Interstate 15, and I-80.
Congestion at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach is causing major shipping delays.
Right now, there's a long line of trucks waiting to get into the port to pick up the goods we've all ordered. Many trucking companies responsible for picking up the boxes at the port say they've been forced to turn new business away.
Any impact to any of those routes, I-10 washout, snow over Donner Summit on I-80 has a significant impact on the economy and the movement of goods, not only in California, but to the rest of the country.
Ultimately, that hits us in the pocketbook because that costs money to put those additional trucks on the road, and it creates more congestion and more opportunities for crashes and things like that. So that's how it could potentially snowball if our system can't meet the performance expectations, which it can't. So that's something that costs $1 today could be $1.50 tomorrow.
We're on a path that it's not a sustainable path on how we can move all this freight and have this quality of life that we have as Americans. You can't sit idly by and just say, well, it'll all work out, because it won't.
The average age of the trucker is 55 years old. So that means in the next 5 years, most of our truckers will be retiring. So we're reaching a frightening cliff.
The Fort Benning Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program hosted their largest industry-specific hiring expo. Over 40 different companies of the trucking industry set up their tables with informational material and gadgets to attract transitioning soldiers and family members with the intention to hire them.
When I go into a room full of transitioning veterans that need jobs, they sometimes seem like our last hope, the last big supply of potential wonderful truck drivers, next generation. What we're really asking them to do is save us again. We've gone over there and now come back into our economy and fill this gaping hole that could potentially destroy us.
I was in the Army. I was a sniper.
I served in the first Persian Gulf War. I was a mechanic, but I also drove deuce and half and 5-ton trucks while I was over there.
I've been driving for about a year, maybe 3 months. I just kind of like being alone by myself because I know where I'm going from point A to point B. I get there, I communicate with people.
Something about commanding a large truck that's exciting to me, and that keeps me alert. I get to meet different people. I get to see our great country.
I have 2 uncles that drove when I was a kid, and I've always liked trucks. And my son has just come out the Navy. He's driving big trucks too.
We definitely need more drivers. As our work increases, we need to be able to supply that demand.
I see a lot of people from other countries, foreign places coming, driving. People from every walk of life, every country, countries I've never even heard of.
Basta de salarios bajos. America Truck Driving School, la llave para cambiar su futuro.
Hola. Bonjour. Guten Tag.
Interstate Truck Driving School created the English as a Second Language class for those who speak English as a second language and want to get their CDL.
Wolf Driving School jest właśnie dla Ciebie.
Truck Driving School na zadać, Sacramento Safe Truck Driving School.
Truck Driving School. Llame hoy.
They're out there driving, trying to get their CDL so that they can drive and provide for their family.
It's a hard job, and most Americans don't want to work that hard.
Wages need to come up dramatically. When we started the company in 1980, the year that the industry was deregulated, adjusted for inflation, our people are working for less money today than they were in 1980.
A lot of people get very confused when they look at driver pay. You see, oh, it's per mile, or it's per load, or it's a percentage of gross pay. They look at this strange language and this unusual pay scale, and it's a little bit scary.
I get paid by the miles. I don't get paid by the hour. If my wheels ain't turning, I ain't making no money.
I'll be getting paid 33 cents a mile.
50 cents a mile.
34 cents a mile.
The trucking industry is exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act, which means that they do not have to pay overtime. When you don't have to pay overtime, truck drivers are paid by the mile, so their incentive is to drive as fast and as far as they can.
You heard that right. Most drivers get paid by the mile, or maybe by the load or by some other piecemeal method, rarely by the hour. If they get stuck in traffic or have to wait in line to unload their truck, they're probably not getting paid for that downtime. Once a driver finally gets rolling again, she wants to keep rolling, to catch up on the time and miles and money she lost while waiting. Because truck drivers can only drive a limited number of hours per day according to the hours of service regulations. When their 11 hours of drive time are up, that's it. They have to stop. And we want them to stop. We want them to rest. But our overcrowded highways slow them to a crawl and eat up their legal drive time.
If traffic stops, even though you're out there working, you're still responsible for that freight, you're still responsible for that equipment, you don't get paid if the wheels are not turning.
So some drivers have been known to engage in a little creative bookkeeping in order to keep driving and make up for lost time, which, as you might imagine, can lead to folks driving tired, driving too fast, and just plain driving badly. You know you've done it too. Sped up to make up for bad traffic, and then you get stuck behind a truck. Trust me, he'd like to be making up time too, but he may have speed-limiting technology that keeps him from putting the pedal to the metal. Everyone's frustrated, but going too fast is not the answer for any of us. Attempts to address these problems have led to controversial changes in the hours of service rules, a contested change in the way driver hours are tracked, and stall tactics on stricter drug testing policies, all of which contribute to the declining number of qualified and experienced drivers.
Until we are able to fix that and all the things that contribute to that, we will not have a healthy supply chain that will allow us to move that product quickly to market.
Here's your takeaway. A lot of truck drivers are working harder than ever to get your stuff through that congestion every day. I'm not saying that makes the roads unsafe, but they're dangerous.
Actor-comedian Tracy Morgan is in critical condition after a deadly car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike over the weekend.
Police say a tractor-trailer truck slammed into the back of Morgan's chauffeured limo bus, overturning it and causing a chain reaction that involved 6 vehicles.
Here you had Tracy Morgan and his friends, one killed, Tracy Morgan seriously injured, hit by a Walmart driver who fell asleep.
And suddenly the issue of driver safety and highway safety becomes front and center, because even though Tracy Morgan may not be a friend or neighbor of anyone specifically, we all know him. And we all know how very close he came.
It was a horrific crash. It was a needless crash. It was a preventable crash. But it is happening every single day in communities across the country.
Recent FMCSA study that was cited found an astounding 65% of truck drivers reported that they sometimes feel drowsy.
The other company that I was with, they would tell me to drive all your time out. And they would get mad because I wouldn't do that. If I'm sleepy, I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna drive, because when I was with that company, they had an accident between a trainer and a young man. They drove off the side of a cliff in California and died. Both of them died. And I knew those people.
Yeah, we lose 32,000 lives on U.S. roads every year. That's the equivalent of a 737 falling out of the sky every 2 days.
I'm not a big city girl. I'm a very small town girl. When I first started driving in the traffic and dealing with the congestion of what we're starting to get into now, I was really, really nervous for a good couple months of learning how to adjust and look and deal with the traffic and not worrying about getting hit or hitting somebody or somebody pulling out in front of me.
When you drive down a road with a truck that is that big and that heavy, every decision you make could cost a life.
The highways, whether you're driving a truck or a car, is not some place where you want people to be learning as they go.
You just can't go get in a truck and it'll all work out just fine. It's not going to happen.
1991, Congress said, come up with driver training regulations. 1991, the agency still has none.
We need safer vehicles, safer drivers, and safer roads. And we need to look at, in this country, our balanced transportation system and what is the best way to accommodate that growth in freight.
We need more capacity, more throughput. We need the ability to separate cars from trucks, maybe in truck-only lanes.
A lot of people like truck lanes because it moves that big old truck out of their way. Frankly, a lot of truck drivers really like truck lanes because it gives us a place to be out of your way. Those are very much needed and very much appreciated.
But it means you need more right-of-way. You need wider footprints for your transportation system, especially the highway system, which is very difficult for us to do in metropolitan areas.
The challenge is, where do you find the new capacity for truck-only lanes? The problem is we're not building highways.
We're entering a new period now where we're going to have to think big. If we're going to compete, if we're going to maintain the quality of life that we expect, if we're going to maintain the economy that we need. We have foreign competitors, China and others that are starting to build modern infrastructure systems now. If you look at percentage of GDP, China's about 9% of their GDP being invested in infrastructure. Western European nations about 5%. The U.S. is closer to 2%. So if we're going to compete, this is something we have to take seriously.
As a kid, I was growing up looking at things coming out of Bell Labs, all the stuff on the front cover of Popular Science, Popular Mechanics magazine. The future was fun.
Let's take a look ahead and see what the commuter can hope for in the future.
I mean, we were going to the moon, we were going to colonize other planets, we were going to have flying cars. We had all kinds of things in store for us.
We also need to be able to dream and also have a vision so that we can ultimately solve this problem.
It's got to be a multimodal transportation system. We've got to make sure that the rails are working for Amtrak, regional transit is working, bus and or rail, as well as the highway system.
We need to think not just about who we're taking onto the roadway, but who we're giving the opportunity to move off of the roadway. If we can get people to get out of their cars to go short distances, we will reduce the loads on the roadways, and we will not have to spend as much of the taxpayers' hard-earned dollar to accommodate these incredibly short trips that shouldn't be in a car in the first place.
The future of freight transportation is going to continually evolve.
The highways will be safer in the future.
My car has a self-parking feature. That's the craziest thing ever. I am astonished when it's like, wait, what?
Many people think self-driving cars are science fiction. But the reality is that already today we're testing self-driving cars like the one behind me in real traffic on roads in Sweden.
Once the two green bars in the center meet, the pedal lights shift to green and the autopilot confirms that the driving and the supervision is delegated to the car.
Sometime between 2030 and 2035, we're going to have the first roads that are designated as driverless only. Then the vehicles on that road will be able to travel much closer together, side by side, front and back, and they can go much faster. Freightliner introduced the first autonomous truck. You can pull it onto an interstate and essentially put it into autopilot.
The autonomous driving technology that we demonstrated this past year, it was a level 3 technology, which means it's not driverless. It's driver assistance to the extreme. So the expectation is the driver's still going to be in the cockpit of the truck at the controls, ready to take over at a moment's notice.
For a truck driver, what these systems means are the ability to drive more safely down the road, to keep the driver more alert and refreshed, as well as save money that they can keep in their pockets by being more fuel efficient.
We're not trying to necessarily change the experienced driver's behavior. They know how to drive for efficiency, but a lot of the future driver population expect to have things like Bluetooth and keyless entry and their phone to be able to integrate with the vehicle.
Today, upwards of 94% of all accidents have some element of human error involved, and so that's our main motivation and reasoning for looking into more automated driving.
Driverless trucks are coming sooner or later, so are drones and everything. I mean, it's going to happen. The question of when and what does it look like?
We've all heard about Amazon wanting to deliver stuff with drones to the house. There's all kinds of issues about that. Is it okay to put it on your driveway? How about if you live in an apartment complex or you're working out of an office building? Where is it okay to put those packages?
I think drones are an interesting concept, and they're starting to be tested. And I think that they bring a lot of interesting changes to our world. Will drones make trucks go away? I don't really think so.
I think you will see trucks and cars interacting in ways that we don't see today. Interconnected or interactive safety will change the way that our highways operate, what I'd maybe call the Internet of trucking.
From George Jetson to the Minority Report, it's as if what Hollywood has said is gonna happen is actually happening.
There's some pilot projects for tube transportation that are going to get kicked off next year. A lot of people have heard about Elon Musk's Hyperloop. Daryl Oster has a competing version called ET3, which is much more streamlined and goes much faster.
Faster than jets.
Faster than jets.
Los Angeles, San Francisco, how long?
Half hour.
Half an hour?
ET3 would take trucks off the highways, some cargo off railroads, cargo off of airplanes, eliminate links in the supply chain, and it would be faster delivery. Coors beer could go from Golden, Colorado to Los Angeles in a matter of 15 minutes and still be cold when it gets there.
Cool! So my self-driving car will take me to the tube station where I can zip from Denver to Chicago for some deep dish pizza and still be home in time to meet the drone that's bringing me my new hologram iPhone 12? Let's do this.
Is it the way of the future? Very possibly. Should it be explored? Absolutely. But is it implementable tomorrow? I'm already getting feedback from different companies, such as Tesla, who has deployed their autopilot technology and they've got cameras on their cars looking at our roads, they're already having problems seeing our striping when our striping is deficient or is faded. They're also having problems when the striping doesn't line up with the concrete lines. How are we going to fix today's problems and the next decade's problems while we're thinking about 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades?
Building more lane miles is not just the way we're going to get out of this infrastructure challenge we have in the United States. We need to look at the transportation issue holistically. So if you're looking at roadways, you're looking at rail systems, bus systems, transit systems. It's going to be a combination of structural stuff and non-structural policies that will really move the nation forward.
Particularly young people with choices today want to be in areas with transit and with biking and walking and lots of things close to work and close to home. These investments in sidewalks and bike lanes and even shared roads where the bikes and the traffic mix up together, they attract jobs and they attract talent. And so it's great for getting people out of the way of the freight that has to move through there. It's also great for attracting economic development.
25% of every dollar we pay into the Highway Trust Fund in fuel taxes is diverted to support public transit initiatives.
I have it on good authority that people out west will never get out of their cars. They definitely wouldn't do it in Dallas until it was built, and then they did. They definitely wouldn't do it in Salt Lake City until they built it, and then they did. They definitely wouldn't do it in Denver until they built it, and then they did. I'm repeatedly told how nobody wants these options, and then it's built and it's beating its 20-year ridership projections in the first couple of years.
Motorists need to appreciate these transit systems, and when they see that train or bus go by, there should be a little friendly wave to them. You know, thanks for helping create a little more space on this roadway.
You're going to have a mixed fleet of automated vehicles and human-driven vehicles for quite some time. So we're going to talk to the different manufacturers to see what infrastructure do you need for your technology to get deployed on our highways, and we can start to address that.
I don't think that Congress alone is responsible for solving the problem. Big business needs to get involved, local cities need to get involved, and it needs to be more on a regional case-by-case basis to make changes overall to the infrastructure.
If you're not willing to step up and invest in the infrastructure, invest in the resources to ensure it's safe, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. And it's time for people to stop pointing fingers and to step up and lead.
If we make those investments, we will put hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people to work in engineering, design, small business. There's manufacturing, because a lot of the product that goes into this, if it's a bridge, it's steel. If it's a transit system, you're talking about sophisticated manufacturing, including high technology these days. So it is broadly across the economy the best thing we could do to stimulate the economy.
Investment in our highways actually make our country more productive. It makes our roads much, much safer for both people that drive cars and trucks. And when you look historically, the better the roads have gotten, the fewer people die in crashes. That's a reality. But 93 was the last time fuel taxes were adjusted for inflation or anything like that, were increased. And of course, it's become a taboo political issue.
The simplest explanation is that no one wants to be held accountable for raising our taxes.
Congress has got a problem. They know that we need a new model, and they don't want to raise taxes.
We're not going to raise the gas tax.
We are not going to raise the gas tax.
There is just a complete disconnect between Main Street, between hardworking men and women in this country and the administration and the members of Congress about how to solve this problem.
There are 33,000 people killed in the United States last year in accidents. A third, 10,000 people, died due to poor infrastructure investment. So forget about the accidents and drunk driving, distracted driving, and all the other things. A third of it is on us because we didn't have the political will to raise our damn taxes.
I don't see it as tax and spend. I see it as an investment in transportation to the benefit of our economy and our quality of life.
If there were one thing that I could do, I would get more people talking about infrastructure at home. I want that to be a dinner conversation. How do I do something about it? Why is infrastructure something I expect to be done? Why shouldn't I get involved and do something about the infrastructure?
It is possible for the public to move this issue forward, but it has to be a top-of-mind issue. It can't just be on the back burner.
Our only hope is for the American public to come to grips with the reality that we are 28th in the world on infrastructure investment, and to be pissed about it.
Just tell me which of these pictures was taken in America and which one is from Africa.
Okay, I got this. The beautiful highway there on the right there, probably Silicon Valley. It's probably heading off to Twitter there. The one on the left, clearly been shelled by rebels. I'm gonna go with Somalia, maybe.
Actually, the road on the right is a superhighway in Central Africa. The photo on the left, I took that from my cab on the way here from the airport.
Oh my God.
The way you reach certain demographics, particularly younger demographics, they're not gonna watch a traditional anchorman, doing this. They don't wanna see it. But they feel they can, trust somebody like Jon Stewart or John Oliver.
Write your congressman, Mitch McConnell, a letter. Pen a letter.
John, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. No one really writes letters anymore.
You're exactly right. Get out your phone. Dial your congressman.
John,
Klondike 5.
John, just tell the people to use social media.
Social media!
If they do hold open office hours, if they do hold town meetings, show up, get a group of people to show up, express your issues. Join a group that shares your views, that is lobbying Congress on that issue.
People can make a difference on that, because if legislators are telling me, oh yeah, I'm hearing from people and we need to do something, then they're feeling some heat. We try to make them see the light with information and knowledge, but sometimes you do need heat from constituents to really move legislation.
We need to manage with facts, and then whatever those facts are, then we need to embolden people to implement solutions. This is exciting stuff.
I tell everybody every day I love this job.
It gets into your blood, and once you start doing it, then that's what you want to do.
Our proudest moments are when we send, 2,000 trucks into Hurricane Sandy with bottles of water in them. Trust me, there are much easier ways to make money than be in trucking. Much, much, much easier ways. And you do it because it's a love.
This adventurous life has been the ticket for me. I've been places, I've done things, I've seen things.
Each generation goes out and builds roads. You can go on just about any old road bed, and there is an old road bed over here. Here's another one here, and they're 30 years apart. Here's another one that they built over here 30 years later. We didn't build one. We're just users. And it's time for us to build our road for the future, and we'd better get started.
Remember that bridge 60 Minutes called out in 2014? Ah, I love a good controlled implosion. The people of Pittsburgh are rebuilding for the future. We can too.
What toys did I play with? Actually, I played with a lot of Legos, erector sets.
My dad made me a toy out of a stick and a flattened soup can and a wheel off of a tricycle. And you would start that thing rolling, and then you would take that stick and that can, and you would chase it all over the property out there.
I played with trucks when I was a kid.
I did have a spirograph as a kid that I played with. In fact, I recently bought another one because I couldn't resist.
I still have my Hot Wheels supercharger, and I have my carrying case, which is in the shape of a giant wheel.
As a child, I was big into rocketry, so I used to build model rockets and launch them.
Believe it or not, I actually had a truck. I had dump trucks, and I had a diesel truck.
I had the coolest crank-operated washing machine. Evidently, I'm just a little housekeeper. And I would wash little doll clothes and crank this little washing machine.
I actually created a pogo stick that was that could jump like 4 or 5 feet in the air. It was great.
Trucks and dinosaurs